Hello, and today we're going to be looking at a Reaper Miniatures figure. This is from their 25th, I think it was, anniversary set. The only problem with these is they had some amazing figures, and they were only available for 1 month, which is a pity because there was really some great figures. And once that month was over, they were done. So I was lucky to get about half of the ones I wanted. There was a couple I didn't mind not getting, but there was a couple I did want. And I picked this one up. This came from Wood for Cheap. I think they've got a couple left. Obviously that's not going to be forever, but if you are interested in these particular figures, they had a couple there. This is, I think his name is Hecklemeyer and Styx. There is a Hecklemeyer available at reapermini.com, but it's not this one. It's the same guy, it's an undead jester, but this was the reimagined sort of design. I have to say I really liked it. There was something about it that just speaks to me, but I couldn't exactly say what. I ended up picking it up, and looking at it, I kept trying to decide what to do, because there's a lot of things you can do, and some people have done some really nice, different ideas with it. I decided to go with what Reaper Mini had posted themselves, the red and the black, and I've stayed pretty close to that. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. My Styx is definitely different to the original painted version on their website, but the actual Hecklemeyer is the black and the red. He is pretty grotesque in a lot of ways. He's your skeleton jester, but they've also got him in a different pose. A lot of skeletons are sort of very basic in their poses. He's not. His pose is quite good, and it's retaining some of his jester sort of outlook. And that made it pretty interesting. The other thing was I wanted to make the red and the black stand out and be bright, but at the same time he's a skeleton, so he's not going to be cleaning himself, and that so he could be quite dirty. So I've tried to work some dirt onto his into his clothing and onto his bones. I've decided I wanted to use him in my D&D campaign, so I came up with the idea that no one has been able to put his soul to rest, and that he was a ventriloquist actor with his son, and Styx is his son. So he got murdered, and he was killed for a secret, and that's why he hasn't been able to rest. So when I do the adventure, it's going to be a little bit more unusual, I think, for that reason. It's going to be, normally you don't do adventures for skeletons, and he's not going to be completely cognitive. I don't believe a lot of these skeletons sort of follow a more basic programming sort of thing. So it's more about learning about something, and hopefully we can put a moral dilemma at the end of it, sort of like, do you do what's right, or do you keep the status quo? So hopefully that'll be an interesting adventure. And the one thing I like about miniatures that's really appealing for me, not just the painting side of it, which is a great fun thing to do, but when you get those minis like this one that stands out, that you see it and you start to think, oh, what if I used him in that? Not just your own characters. I mean, that's cool enough. If you play D&D or Pathfinder, anything like that, there is a lot of minis out there, fantasy minis for every class pretty much now. Being able to find that one that speaks to you about what your character looks like, and that's really cool. But for GMs, being able to find a mini that stands out as this idea that could become a story or a character within that story, especially if that character or that story wasn't there to begin with. Sometimes you'll need a ranger that's already in the adventure, and you can go out, that's definitely it. But it's so much more satisfying when you find that mini that then does it in reverse. You find the mini and then you want to tell a story about that mini. I think that this can also help people that don't play but do paint miniatures. I think it's not a bad thing to actually decide and come up with a story for the miniatures you're painting. I think it can sometimes give you a better connection to the mini, and I think it can sometimes just give you better ideas about the mini. I mean, not always, that doesn't mean that you have to, but I think it can. I think it can be a cool process that when you start thinking about who was this person, and then you can start to find some things about colours, and is he going to be clean, is he going to be dirty, especially with knights, right? Like, a knight can be clean and pristine and colourful like a ceremonial guard, but that same miniature you can paint as being tarnished and rusted. A bit like if you look at Excalibur. The knights for the first 3/4 of that film are as shiny can be, but if you find the ones towards the end who have been questing for the Grail for so long, their armour is now tarnished, and that was a reflection of their soul. They were broken, they were tired, they were weary, they no longer believed that they could find the Grail, and it was reflected in their armour. So you can get minis like that where you can paint it multiple different ways. The story makes that paint really important, which way you're going to take that figure. And a lot of the times these decisions are made just by looking at it, just sort of going, oh, I'm going to paint it like this, or I'm going to paint it like that, or I've painted a lot of bright ones. But if you have that story, I think it can really help. So this was a really fun miniature to do. He was meant to actually be connected. The Styx was actually came on a base and was just meant to be on the ground, but I decided no, I'm going to have him dangling off the puppet master's wooden control stick there. But then I also decided to try to put him on a weird angle, because he's not going to fix him. He's not going to keep him neat and organised like he would have in a normal show when they were human. He's skeleton now. He's following a certain positioning and ideal, but he's not performing in the same way, and he's probably not conscious of that in the same way. So having Styx on a weird sort of dangling angle sort of worked for me. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with him, and if you can still find the figure, I think it's worth picking up. It's not what you'd normally necessarily have on your shelf or in a game, but it's unusual enough that later on you might think, oh, I wish I had that. So if you find one, I'd suggest picking up. They're good fun.